Thanks, Malik, for the great intro. So before I even started planning out this presentation, I was watching a couple of Creative Mornings talks from around the world, like Geneva, Amsterdam, Canada, all over the place. And about 4 talks in, I realized that there was a common thread between all of the amazing talks that I was watching. And I thought to myself, okay, so this is what I'm going to do, and my presentation is going to be great, and I don't have to worry about anything. And that secret was basically to mention how unbearably early in the morning it was. So thank you all for coming out on a Friday at 8:30 a.m. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to do something right now to sort of remedy any fatigue that you may have. So if you have anything in your lap, just put it under your chair because we're going to be playing a quick game. So, all right, awesome. So how this game is going to work, I'm going to read a statement aloud. I'm also going to project it onto the screen here. And if the statement applies to you, I kind of just want you to stand up, look around the room, sort of observe what's going on, things of that nature. And even if you're not, if it doesn't apply to you, just remain seated and look around because, trust me, this will be powerful. So the first statement, I have naturally curly hair. So if it applies to you, stand up. Awesome. You can go ahead and sit down. I'm considered short. Go ahead and sit down. I'm considered tall. I have blue eyes. Awesome. I was not born in America. Awesome. I speak more than one language. Everyone's standing up. I have an accent. I have been judged by others based on my accent. It just got really intense, so. All right, go ahead and sit down. I have felt like an outsider in my own community. I have felt limited by my gender. I have been denied opportunity because of my gender. I have been catcalled. I have lived below the poverty line. I'm just gonna, yeah. I have felt that my lack of income has limited my opportunity. I'm afraid of being pulled over by the police. I have been the only person of my race in a room. I've been told I sound white for my race. I've tried to hide my sexuality. I've been violently threatened because of my sexuality. All right, that's good. Awesome. Yay. I've felt ostracized by my religious community because of my sexuality. Awesome. Another good one. I've tried to hide my religion. I'm going to stand up for this one too. So, I've tried to hide my identities in order to feel accepted. I've felt limited because of my identities. I've lived in fear because of my identities. Another good one. Awesome. I've been self-conscious about my identities. All right. So, yeah, everyone go ahead and sit down. So I actually learned about this activity at a leadership conference that I went to in Washington, D.C. as part of the Bank of America Student Leaders Program. It was a one-week conference, and on the first night, we all, 215 of us from around the country, gathered in a room. And mind you, this was after 5 hours of travel, missed buses, walking around D.C., which is a very large city. And Ava Vega, who's actually pictured in the photo here, from the Anti-Defamation League, actually played this activity with us. And I remember just sitting down in the room and standing whenever something applied to me. And halfway through the activity, it was very silent then. It was just very like serene and a weird environment to be in. Everyone was really quiet, and then we all stood up when something applied to us. And halfway through, I was like, oh my God, this is really intense. And then I started shaking uncontrollably. And when I mean uncontrollably, I mean I was just a complete mess. I get really emotional sometimes, so Ava told us basically after the activity had finished, she asked us how we felt, and I raised my hand. I don't know how it got there, but it was up. And then there was a mic in my hand, and as I stood up, I realized that I was going to break down, and then I broke down into the microphone. So I cried into the microphone in front of 215 people. It's probably one of the most embarrassing moments in my life, especially because they caught it on camera. A couple of pictures, too. And then I broke down later to Ava. So I just showed you all a couple of pictures of me crying. So why was I getting so emotional? Well, being able to stand up in front of 215 other students and basically admit the struggles that you had been going through, and to see all of the other struggles that these students were going through as well, and how you could relate to them even though you thought you were very isolated in that time. That was something that really shocked me. And you know, shock is the theme for this month's Creative Mornings. And Creative Mornings writes, "Shocks to the system do us good. They wake us up, they change the course of history, and they disrupt the norm. Unexpected moments open our minds to new ideas. Uncomfortable pieces of art challenge our perceptions of what we think is right." So I'm here to talk to you today about how I've sort of, because of my experiences with shock, I've become sort of like the fork in the outlet for my community. And I want to show you how I've utilized shock value in order to create positive change and challenge people's perceptions of what we think is right. So just to tell you a little about my first experience with shock, I think I was in 6th grade when this happened. And I was sitting at lunch, and one girl came up to me, and she was like, "Hey, Salma, I have a question for you." And I was like, "Okay, go ahead." And she was like, "Are you a terrorist?" And I said, "What?" and I hardly even knew what a terrorist was at this point. I mean, we'd heard about them on the news, but I didn't really understand the full definition. So I was like, "I don't really think so." And then I went home, and I asked my dad, "What's a terrorist?" My dad's right here. So I asked him, "Bubba, what's a terrorist?" And he explained to me that it was someone that caused harm to others in order to further their political agendas. And I remember thinking, why would anyone associate me, a 12-year-old girl, with terrorism? Like, that's not something that I would do ever, right? And then second, I mean, what kind of political agenda could I possibly have at the age of 12? Like, more pizza for lunch, no more uniforms. Like, no, those weren't things that I didn't have a political agenda, so I was just confused. I was shocked, and I realized at that moment that a key part of who I am, a key identity that I have, being Muslim and growing up as a Muslim American, wasn't accepted in my community. And that shock was just, I felt isolated, I felt alone. And whenever you experience shock, you have two options. And these options are, you can either lose faith in humanity or do absolutely nothing about it, or you can only partially lose faith in humanity and create constructive change in order to restore that faith. I was in 6th grade at the time. I had no time to start a social revolution or anything like that. I was too busy being an angsty preteen. So I chose the first option. And like every time someone would say an Islamophobic comment, anytime someone would talk to me about, oh, is Osama bin Laden your dad or something like that, I'd just be like, I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't say anything, and I wouldn't. I just became numb. And numbness happens when we're shocked too often, but we forget to take our finger out of the outlet. So, I could have said something about the comments. I could have addressed them, and I could have said, this isn't right. My parents are peaceful people. I live in a peaceful community. I'm not a terrorist in any way. I could never dream of being a terrorist, but I didn't, and I chose to just let it fly over my head. And, it became isolating, and it became really depressing and annoying. But, President Obama references this same shock in reference to the Oregon shootings that happened this past month. And he says that we've become numb to this. Every month we're seeing another story of mass shootings, and every month we're seeing another name of lists coming out, another list of names coming out in the news. But we fail to do anything about it. We keep our finger on the outlet, and there's a clear solution to this. But no one is choosing to lift their finger off of the outlet and step back and say, this is what we have to do. This same analogy can be applied to any social problem, any political problem, any issue in general. And, climate change, mass incarceration, the resegregation of schools, these are all issues that we have to step back and say, it's time for us to act. I could go on forever about all of these issues, but I won't. I have to get back on topic. So 3 years after my first experience with shock, I was in 9th grade, and I was sitting in the front of my English class when 5 students walked in with our counselor, Miss Martin, and they pulled up a panel in front of the room, and they set up the panel, and Ms. Martin explained to us that this is a Student Voices panel, and Student Voices is a project created by the MCCJ in order to address bullying based on differences and really tell stories of adversity. And actually, I want to give a quick shout out to Roberta Shevin from the MCCJ, who really started this project. Yeah, Roberta has been my sounding board. She's been my inspiration. So back to Student Voices. The 5 students in the room shared their stories of the adversity that they faced, and 2 stories really resonated with me from that day. And the first was the story of my friend Jenny, who was disabled, and she had actually lived in New York prior to coming to Miami. And in New York, because of her disability, they refused to offer her a spot at their school because they said she wouldn't be able to climb the stairs or something like that. And then Jenny came here, and she was able to start a new life here. And, her story really showed me, okay, this is a problem that people with disabilities are really facing. And then the next story was of my friend Manny, who had to hide a clear part of his identity because he was afraid it wouldn't be accepted. Manny's gay, and when he went to our school, he was about to transfer out of our school because he was really scared that people in his PE class would not be accepting of his sexuality. And, Manny's with me today in school, so I'm really glad he didn't transfer out. He actually just got nominated for Silver Knight, so yay! It's good that he stayed. But anyways, these stories, the story of Manny and the story of Jenny, they really showed me what the experiences of marginalized groups in our community are. We've all heard about the issues that the disabled community and the gay community face. We've all heard of them. We listen to the news and everything. But until I heard a personal story, until I heard someone speak about their experience as a gay person, their experience as a disabled person, I was unable to make that connection between this is an issue and we have to act because people are being affected by it. And that was another moment of shock. It was another moment of shock. And I once again had 2 options. Same options as before, but this time I chose the second one because I was ready to make a social revolution. I was ready to make a difference. And, I stepped back from my situation and I said, if I just share my story and if I just address the issues that I faced as a Muslim person in Miami, I can make a difference. I can do something about this, right? So A year later, I went to Miss Martin and I told her, Miss Martin, I really liked Student Voices last year. You know, I listened to one panel and it really impacted me in a way, and I'd like to share my own story. So I sat down in her office and I told her my story, and she told me, okay, well, the trainings are in 2 weeks from now, so just fill out this field trip form and go home, talk to your parents about it, stuff like that. And then 2 weeks later, went to the training with the MCCJ, met Roberta there, and ever since then, my life has changed completely. You know, every panel that we went to after the training, we had one every month, and in every freshman class, we'd receive such a good response from the audience. You know, people would share their stories, people would cry, people would talk about the adversity that they faced. And I realized, oh my God, we're actually making a difference in our school, we're actually making a difference in our community. And so I went home that day and I was like, what if I took this difference that we're making, and what if I expanded it to something greater, and I made it something bigger? So sat down for a couple of months just thinking and thinking and thinking. And when I mean, like, I looked up every kind of project that I could come across, and I realized at the time that I was really interested in YouTube, and I was really interested in mass media and how we can disseminate information through videos, right? And then one day I came across what people like to call Draw My Life videos, which are basically whiteboards where you draw out your life and then you put a voiceover on top talking about your experiences. And then a couple of months later, Fabula Rasa was born. And Fabula Rasa is aimed at invoking empathy through innovative storytelling. And this is the project that I'm here to talk to you all about today. We use whiteboard animations and voiceovers in order to provide marginalized groups with a platform on which they can share their stories, because in traditional media, we see the stories of people who are already big, you know, Hillary Clinton, Ben Carson, Donald Trump, but marginalized groups never get the attention that they deserve. Marginalized groups have no platform where they can share their stories, and that's something that I wanted to address. So it's really hard to describe what the videos look like if you haven't seen a Draw My Life video, so I'm just going to show you.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
Hello, I'm Camille.
Hey, I'm Gabby.
Hello, I'm Michael.
Hello, I'm Isa.
Hi, I'm Bianca.
Hello, I'm Salma. Welcome to Fabula Rasa, where we're dedicated to invoking empathy through innovative storytelling.
Oftentimes in traditional media, the issues that plague our society seem very distant. The tragedies we see go through the traditional 24-hour news cycle. For example, after the Sandy Hook shooting, within days we had moved on to the next issue. This is not okay.
The thing is, the people that are affected by the issue discussed don't disappear after 24 hours.
There are still people being affected today by racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, immigration policies, and several other injustices, even if we don't necessarily hear about them.
That's where Fabula Rasa comes in. We want to take the issues that affect the people in our community and make them relevant again. We want to share stories that will inspire people to become change makers.
We want to provide marginalized groups with a platform on which they can be heard. We want to be their microphone.
Stories have the power to turn abstract into reality. They have the power to mold us into more empathetic and caring human beings. They have the power to turn our tabula rasa into a slate filled with love and compassion.
It's time for us to work towards creating a more accepting and aware global community. It's time for us to take action. You are a part of this global community. The first step towards creating this ideal world is to take the initiative to become an accepting and aware person.
We are Fabula Rasa, and we're here to help. Start the journey by watching some of our videos that deal with issues that you haven't heard about before. Subscribe to the channel to stay informed about the issues that plague our society on a more personal level than any traditional media could ever accomplish. Click the link below to find out more. Thanks, guys. See you there. So how does shock fit into Fabula Rasa? Well, I've really tried to incorporate shock and shock value in two ways. First, shocking our viewers, and second, shocking the people who share their stories on our channel. So as you saw, it's not necessarily that we put like really cool graphic effects or weird noises or anything like that in our videos, which means that we have to shock people through our content. We have to shock people through the stories that we're telling, which can be very difficult, but I think we've managed to do a good job. And so everyone has heard about immigration policies and how they've influenced the immigrant community, especially in Miami, the city of immigrants. And we've all heard about them before, but until I heard Nicole's story, which is actually on the channel, you can go ahead and watch it. Until I heard Nicole's story, I didn't realize just how much struggle and how much adversity the immigrant community in our society has to go through. Nicole is undocumented, and she was telling me about how she can't afford college because she doesn't receive any federal financial aid, and how she has to work to support her whole family because she's the only one that has a social security number because of DACA. And this story really showed me just how important it was for us to act. We hear about immigration policies, we hear about the big wall that Donald Trump is planning on building or whatever, and it doesn't become real to us until we hear the story of someone who's actually going through it. Another story that I shared was of my friend Sophia, who faced sexual harassment based on because she hit puberty very early on. And Sophia's story really showed me just how important it was for us to address rape culture and misogyny in our society, because until we act, people like Sophia, victims of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, they're not going to get any better. Sexual harassment, it influences your whole life. You find yourself feeling isolated. You find yourself feeling alone and scared. And Sophia's story really honed in on these emotions. So we also aim to invoke empathy in the people who are actually, no, not invoke empathy, but shock the people who are actually sharing their stories. I remember when I shared my story, I expected this huge influx of hate mail. I was like, no one's gonna like my story. Everyone's gonna say like, oh, go back to where you came from. Just why are you even talking about this issue? Stuff like that. And for 3 days after I published my video, I was just scrolling through my comments, looking for any negativity on the video. And I just expected it because that's what I had faced for so long. But on the third day at like 5 o'clock, I realized there's so many comments on this, and they're all positive. They're all positive. People, my mentors, my closest friends, my family members, loved ones, they all commented on how impactful the story was. And, see, someone from the MCCJ commented, so... Yeah, the chairman of the board, and I was really like, oh! My teacher from Girls Who Code commented. People I'd never even met before from Somalia, India, the UK, Canada. It was just a huge influx of positivity. And, I stepped back and I realized, wow, this is actually, people actually care. People actually want to listen. And that's very different from the traditional experience of a marginalized group. They're marginalized in that people don't want to hear their stories. People don't want to care, and that's so different. And it's no different for any other video on my channel. Each one comes with a huge onslaught of positivity, an onslaught of emotional comments. You see, you're an inspiration. You're so wonderful. It takes a lot of courage to share something like this. And every single video has positive comments on it. And each time someone comes up to me and tells me, your story really impacted me. And my friend Gabby, who actually shared her story of how she felt isolated and alone because people would shame her for her body size. Someone from the audience just came up to me this morning and told me, I watched your video and it really touched my heart. And I'm going to text Gabby after this and be like, a little girl came up to me today and told me your video touched her heart. And I'm really excited for how she's going to react, because that shock that comes when you realize that people actually are responding positively, that's something that can pull you out of the numbness that you've been facing for so long. Fabula Rasa is a place where hundreds of people can gather, grab someone by the arms, and force them to pull their finger out of the outlet, force them to make a difference and to address this issue. the second that you see people are responding positively to your story, you want to share it more and you want to make a difference more. And I think that's something that's extremely important. And that's, I feel, the more important of the two shock values that we have here. Because these people, they need a catalyst for them to create effective change, and Fabula Rasa has become that catalyst. Shock can make you or break you. You can either decide to become numb, unresponsive, or just all around lazy, scared, isolated, or you can choose to act. You can choose to excel in what you do. You can choose to take that shock and make a difference. And here at Fabula Rasa, we feel that it's necessary for us to encourage the second option, for us to encourage people to utilize shock and make a difference with it. And now for you all here today, you guys have that option. You guys have you have the option of either keeping your finger on the outlet or pulling away right now. You can either choose to become unresponsive to the shock that you've just experienced from all these amazing stories, or you can get involved. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, email, Instagram too. Anything. Just share your story, get involved. Let this be the shock that makes a difference. That's all I have. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions, so if anyone has a question, I'll bring the mic to you and you can ask Salma.
Hi Salma, my name's Amanda.
Hi.
So now that you have achieved a certain consciousness that some people only wish to achieve, what's next for you? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to take everything that you've touched yourself and everything you've experienced?
Right, so next steps. This is a very interesting question. I'm actually applying to college right now, and that's more of what I'm doing personally. But in terms of Fabula Rasa, we actually have an event coming up February 6th at the MDC Wolfson campus, room 2106, for immigration reform. It's called Invoking Empathy, Undocumented and Unafraid. And we're basically taking inspiration from Nicole's story, which you've heard about. And we're inviting guest speakers, Daniela Levine-Cava, the superintendent, people like that. And then after those guest speakers talk, we're going to have a letter writing campaign where we basically address, we pressure our legislators and the people who are proposing immigration reform to actually take this into account, take personal stories into account. So that's what I'm really excited for. I plan on taking this project with me to college, and I plan on training someone here in Miami to continue it here, because we have such a diverse community here that it would just be a shame if I left and no one is here recording all the stories that are so impactful in our community. So, anyone else?
Thank you, Salma, for everything. Now that you said that you started taking action, this is just a comment to the group. Probably one of the things we can do here is start just spreading your word and making a lot of noise about your stuff. So I would invite everybody here to just go on and do something. As simple as it looks, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Salma.
Hi.
For your stories and for your content, how do you define success for your projects?
So in terms, do you mean like success in my project or success stories?
Both. Okay,
so success is really hard to define, but I'm going to try. In terms of Fabula Rasa, our TOK teacher, our theory of knowledge teacher in our school, she has a poster on the board that basically says success is you making a positive impact in your community. And success isn't monetary, it's not anything like that. For me, success within Fabula Rasa is basically taking the stories that I've heard, sharing them, and spreading the message. Success is having people watch my videos and come up to me and tell me, this really made a difference in my life. Things of that nature. And in terms of success stories for people who have shared their stories, Nicole, who's undocumented, went to FIU on a full scholarship called the Dream.US Scholars program. Manny's in school now. He got the Harvard Book Award last year. He's headed for great things. And, just people who share their stories always find positivity, and they take that and they draw that positivity and they put it into the work that they do. So that's what I define as success for both of us. Anyone else?
I'm just curious as to what you're going to be studying in school. I think it would be interesting to follow your career and see, what wonderful things you end up doing.
So thank you. And I actually want to study social science when I grow up. So really, I want to focus on political science. I don't know if you guys saw, I got really passionate in the slide about gun control. Making a difference and sharing people's stories is just something that I'm really passionate about. And I feel if I were to go into advocacy, legislation, things of that nature, I feel like I could make a huge difference there. So I want to go to law school for human rights. So yeah, that's it. Anyone else?
Thanks so much for sharing your story. Thank you for your time. As we move past the information age and into the energetic age, we're talking about shock today. What are your thoughts and feelings on energy when it comes to shock? And do you meet shock with shock? Is this in energies when you've been hurt, traumatized? What are your thoughts about energy in regards to trauma in your work?
Right. So that's a very interesting question. Thank you. And I'd really just define shock as what you said, a traumatic experience, an emotional experience, something like that. And responding to an emotional experience with emotion and with passion is something that I feel is extremely necessary. So in terms of energy, responding to negativity with positivity is something that I feel is definitely what we should be doing. Instead of responding to hate with hate, we respond to hate with love. We respond to hate with passion. We respond to hate with drive. And those conflicting energies really can be so much more impactful than we could ever imagine. People taking their passions and drawing from the shock that they've experienced, that's something that I find really amazing. I feel like that's something that I've done. I took the shock that I experienced and I ran with it. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Salma, not everybody has parents like yours that are nurturing, that are loving and sensitive. The shock of knowing students and kids like yourself that have no one and are silos alone, I believe that what you're doing today is going to help break down those silos. For those that don't have the support group,
right,
they can have people like yourself and others in this room to help share them as they move forward and be nurtured. So congratulations to your parents for being the kind of parents who understand that.
Anyone else?
I just want to mention that when Salma said that Student Voices was the beginning of her sort of awakening and seeing there was something positive she can do, we do this program in a number of high schools here in Miami, not nearly enough. And we never know. In this case, we have an amazing young woman who took her intellect and her passion and ran with it. As Salma knows, we never know when these stories are shared in a classroom who we're affecting. We may never know whose, in some cases, life we saved, and whose life was changed because they heard someone share a story that they experienced too, and they thought they were all alone. So I guess my pitch is that if there's any of you in the room who have a connection at a high school, or with a counselor in a high school here in Miami, where we might be able to bring this program and more young people can get this message, we'd love to hear from you at MCCJ because we believe passionately in the power of stories. And obviously we're very, very proud of some.